Welcome everyone, this is the FX Masters program, lesson 12. We're going to talk about today, we're going to talk about soft bodies. We're going to begin talking about that. Still considered part of level 1 of the power user section. But as you know, we're going to be combining that with some of the topics from the prototyping course. We're going to do something a little bit different. I was thinking about it last night when I was preparing the class. And this will have to be related to the mountain section, so creating mountains, which is part of this course as well. But I'm going to do something slightly different, something more interesting, and something that I think will have more of an application and a impact on your work and with your clients. I never done it before. I was, preparing the class yesterday, and it kind of the idea came up, and this is thanks to actually. But what gave me a little bit of an idea, put me in the right direction for this, was one of the students, Daniel, from the course. He asked me a question a couple of days ago regarding. He asked me if it was possible to control goal per particle based on an image. We've done it with expressions, we randomized it with U and V directions and things, but nothing based on a texture. And that got me thinking because at the moment I didn't have an exact answer, and I'm not by any means expecting to know everything, of course, in Maya. So I kind of gave him an answer. It kind of worked for him, not based on textures. I never done it, like I said before. But then that got me thinking, and last night I was trying, and then I figured this way that it could be interesting, and I think it will have some fun results. So as always, the FX Power User program will talk about soft bodies in a slower, more detailed fashion. I want to jump right into it right away. So always with a simple example, so I don't force you to go back to a lesson that you don't want to probably. But if you want, again, if you want, all the details and explanations of every attribute, then refer to the FX Power User program level 1, and there's a couple of examples there. This is not going to be the only class we're going to use soft bodies, so don't worry. I think I love them. They have a lot of use. I'm not a big fan of end cloth or anything like that. I prefer soft bodies. I'm not saying that I'm going to dress a character with soft bodies. I wouldn't dress a character at all. That's something I don't really not like doing that. But I use it for footprints and many things, even for flags and stuff like that. Sometimes I find it easier. So let's go. Let's figure it out. So soft bodies in a nutshell. Soft bodies are a way that Maya has to deform geometry with particles. In the early days, when I began doing these things, there was no end cloth, there was no cloth. Maya cloth came up a few versions of Maya after I started. So if you wanted to do anything kind of related to cloth, then you had to go with this route. It's not only used for cloth, it's all, like I said, it's deforming geometry with particles. So you can use it for describing regions, for example, of a fat face. Then you can have the floppy areas be driven by soft bodies. You can do basic versions depending on, of course, the proximity to the camera and all. You can do water surfaces. I don't mean splashes or, hybrid simulations or things like that. No, I'm talking about flat lakes, calm oceans, things of that nature. You can also handle it with this. Like I said, footprints, flags, and this new thing that I haven't seen anyone try this in any course. This is probably the first time. It's not like I'm watching courses all the time, but I never heard of this. I never seen it used anywhere. So I think probably we're, the pioneers on this one. So for that, I'm going to create myself a plane, just something to play with, something big enough, and I'm going to give it some detail. As far as the detail goes, you need to keep in mind that what's going to happen when I run the soft body in here is that Maya is going to place a particle on every CV of this piece of geometry, as you can see. So all of these are the CVs, and Maya is going to put one particle on each one. And in a way, what you should imagine this is that Mine's not going to replace the vertice with a particle, but it's going to put a particle on top of it, and it's going to constrain them. I'm not 100% sure that's the way it works, under the hood of Maya, but that's what the result looks like. So the CV is going to follow the particle wherever it goes. You can move it with fields, with expressions. You can do anything we've learned so far. And wherever the particle goes, the CV goes. Hence, you get the deformation on the surface. So the number of the CVs, or how much detail you have on your surface, is going to have a big impact on the speed of your simulation and ultimately, the number of particles that you will have. To keep that in mind. I don't see much of a difference, to be honest, with enclosed, because you will need a lot of detail as well. This geometry will respond to deformers or topology changes after the fact. So if you want to smooth the geometry after it's been simulated, just like you do with enclosed, it's fine. It's completely fine. So for that, okay, I got my geometry, I got my detail. You just select it, go to the effects menu as always, go to the end particles menu, and then go to soft body right at the bottom under the legacy particles. If you choose to use soft bodies over here, then you're gonna get, instead of regular particles, you will get end particles, which is fine. We will use those later. Remember that we're not ready for that yet, in my opinion. So I'm just gonna go with regular legacy particles. Soft body, go open the options, and here by default you get this. You get the option of creating a soft body directly from this piece of geometry. So what's going to happen is going to take this plane, which I have here. Like I said, it's going to put particles on each CV. It's going to constrain each particle with each CV that it corresponds, and done. Yeah, we can use it if you want to. Then you get this. It looks like nothing happened, but if you look on the outliner, you get your plane, and now you get a particle system. This particle system has no emitter. That's the difference. These particles are not being emitted. They're just being placed there by a command in Maya. But they're particles nonetheless. We can put a turbulence field. Give ourselves some time. Step back. And you see this. Simple. There you go. So a piece of geometry is being deformed, or destroyed in this case, by a particle simulation. It's very fast because at the end of the day, I only have a handful of particles. I think we have so far 961 particles. That's nothing for the system. Driving the geometry is not really a big deal. It's not really, I don't think, in my opinion, it's a constraint. There must be some sort of internal connection that is faster than that. If you have 961 constraints, it will be hell. So no, that's not really what happens. I just say constraints so you can picture this. Wherever particle goes, the CV goes, and the geometry gets deformed. That's not what you probably used to seeing a soft body goes, because you see very smooth surfaces, and you don't really see this chaotic mess. This is just a regular soft body done the regular way with the default settings. If you try something else, then we try another option. If you look at this menu, then you get duplicate. Two duplicates. You can make either the original, a soft body, or you can duplicate it and make the copy of that geometry a soft body. That's usually what I do. That's what most people tend to do. Although I don't see much people using soft bodies, but again, they tend to go with a harder approach, and I'm not a big fan of that. But soft bodies, I don't really see much people use them anymore. It's a shame though, because you will see how powerful can it be. So, but when we use them, I use them in every film, guarantee you that. I used it on Potter 5, doing a shield for Voldemort. I think if you see my promotional material, you will see it. It's a blue shield of particles. That's driven by a soft body. I used it on Avatar. I used it on every single film that I worked on. I always use soft bodies because they're very, very helpful, very quick. And as we talked about in these lessons, it's always a good practice to randomize values, right? We don't want all the particles with the same mass. We don't want all with the same speed. We don't want them with the same color or opacity. We want to change as much as we can on them. And one key aspect, in my opinion, is probably not to have, um, straight static geometries to emit sometimes. Sometimes it's interesting to have a deformed piece of geometry to get your particles out. So that's what I'm saying. I can guarantee you that I used it on every film, and I will continue to use them because it's quite powerful. So as far as the creation method, then you can choose whatever you want. The one I recommend the most is to duplicate and make the copy a soft body. That way you have a piece of geo that has all your textures and UVs and whatever treatment you're making. You don't lose that. You always have a copy just in case something goes wrong, then you can go back. And above all, once you turn this option, then you get these three things unlocked. And it tells you to duplicate the input graph will mean that if you have animated geometry, so a character, for example, and you need to keep the animation and then have a soft body applied on that, then you need to duplicate the input graph so you get all the connections coming through. You can hide the non-soft object, and that's usually what I do because, like I said, I keep the original one as a backup geometry. And the best one is this one. You can make the non-soft a goal object for the soft particles. So I'm going to do this too. Goals, we already talked about it in many lessons. You already know what it is, and you definitely know what this is, the weight. So I'm going to use, for example, a weight of 1 and hit create. Then you get the original plane, and you get a copy of it, and the copy is the one that's made a soft body. If you look at the particles, they're regular Maya particles with all the attributes, the conserve, mass, everything. There's nothing different there. And he also has a goal weight, which is set to 1. Just the same exact way that works with the previous lessons we did. What are they goal to? They're goal to the CVs of the original plane. So you have the original plane with your CVs. Then when you make a soft body, you make a copy of that plane. You put a particle on top of each CV of the copy. You have your connection to deform the copied geometry, and then you goal the particles to the CVs of the original plane. That's what's happening in this case. So that's what that goal is for. And it's quite useful because you will see the result in a moment. I'm going to connect the particles to the turbulence field I already have. If you rewind and hit play, you get nothing. Normal. If I had you live, I will ask you why. I'll give you 20 seconds to think. Why does it move? There you go. It's playing, but nothing is happening. Is it broken? Is my Maya's buggy? Do I need to change an address because I'm going to break everything in here because I'm so mad it's not going to work? Nope. You grab your particles, and it's just because they have 100% attraction to the vertices. We've done this before. So they're glued to those things. No matter how many forces you put, no matter how many collisions, nothing are going to move those particles from there. Unless I go in here and I lower my goal weight. So get my particle selected, and goal weight is 1. How about we put 0.3? There we go. So we get something. We get something. And what is it? Let's see. Let me rewind. Hit play. So we get some sort of deformation. Starts to look like something familiar to you. How about I increase it? Starts to look like something. Like what? Well, what happens if I put the camera down here? It looks like some sort of ugly, messy water. It's not really water, but it looks like something. So you get the gist. Actually, the example on the Effects Power User program for soft bodies, I believe the first one is a proper water surface. I'm not going to redo it on this one because it's cheating. We're going to do something even better. But you get the idea, right? So that's how it works. I'm going to grab my particles. If you get rid of the entire goal, then you get the same result as you had on the first try. This. So you kind of get an idea why the goal weight is important or more useful in some situations, probably 90% of the situations is I will advise you to do that. At least to have the option, because if you don't do it, if you just create a soft body directly, then and you want to create a goal afterwards, it's just annoying to do it. That it's better to always create a duplicate, make the copy soft, and then set up some sort of a goal weight with the other one. If you don't want to use it, just set it to 0, but then you have the option there. It's faster. You don't have to redo, a few steps. So there you go. That's soft bodies in a nutshell. Simple. Doesn't have to be a plane. It could be a closed object, like I say. So let me get rid of this. Another example that I have used on my courses, on the Effects Power User program again, if you go to the case studies, there is the first one, which is the Harry Potter Effects Part 1. In that one, I cover 3 examples. One of them is the water sphere from Harry Potter 5. That's not exactly how it was done, the way I mentioned it in that course, because they used a proper fluid solver. But it gives you pretty much the same result, and I was so I feel so bad for the guy doing those things, because he spends months and months doing that. That was made with proper particle simulations and things like that, and meshing. A nightmare, though. That's the only shot he did in the entire film, because he spent months doing that. And I was looking at it and thinking, well, that's not my place to come and say anything, especially because I was new to the company. But I would have probably gone with a different way. So in that course, that's why I teach that. So I teach that. So if you want to see it in more detail, then you should watch that class. That class is very good. But here's the same idea. You can have more detail. The more detail you have, the better it will look. The softer the deformation will be. So here's my sphere. Same procedure. Go to soft bodies. Duplicate my copy soft. Goal weight of 1. Hit create. You're done. Set these particles. Connect them to the turbulence field. Sorry. There you go. And play with the goal weight and specify something that is close enough. Again, it's not gonna give you. Let me just decrease the goal weight to get more deformation in here. I see this, and in my brain, I don't know what happens in what you're thinking, but I see this and I think of bacteria. I think of viruses for medical animations, for example, for the spiky nature of the thing. Remember, you can always play with the turbulence field pattern, frequency, as always. 0.1, for example, put this to 30. And you get a different, more gooey result. It's not perfect, it's not beautiful, but you get the idea. So it doesn't have to be open geometry, it doesn't have to be closed geometry, it can be anything you like. There can be animated characters, it could be curves as well. There's an example. I keep referring to the Effects Power User because remember, that's your Bible, that's your foundation. This is more of an experimental, hands-on, guerrilla style course, right? Even though it's longer, but I believe the examples are a bit more, I don't know, adventurous, let's say, on this one. So on the Effects Power User, then there are other examples. One of them using a curve with was creating a chain, for example, the old-fashioned way. Nowadays, with the new technologies and everyone wants to be a hero, then you will grab the actual geometry of the chain and make rigid bodies out of them or whatnot. Fine. But if you don't have the budget to deal with that kind of stuff, you can get very convincing chains by creating, for example, the chain geometry, putting joints on every link, doing an IK handle, we generate a curve and then make that curve a soft body. That is explained on the Effects Power User. So remember, always refer to that one for additional examples. So my point is that it works with all those kind of things. It does look a big spiky, and that's usually the case unless you do something that we're going to do now. Let me, there you go, I got my original plane. So you've seen that when we create that, it always looks a bit, like I said, spiky, right? So I'm going to reconnect everything. Okay. And I'm going to lower my goal weight again to something like 0.3. And I get this kind of deformation. This is fine because the frequency of the turbulence field is low. But if I increase that and put that back to 1 the way it was before, then we get this kind of weird. It's not really water. That's what when I showed you, I said, well, you know, looks like some kind of broken ugly water because you get these spikes, right? And this is happening because each particle is moving and is not really aware of the neighbors. So if you really want a smooth surface, you obviously you need to have particles being aware of what's around. You know, I know you've seen water 100 million times in your life, but let's see, to illustrate what I'm talking about. Okay, so let's see. Like I said, you're not going to be doing big waves or hero waves with this kind of stuff. It's just for standing kind of simple water surfaces. They're cheaper to do this way than with the real flow or whatever else you may think of. Remember, don't always grab the big tool to do something simple. It might take longer, it will be more expensive. So for something like this, where you get all these ripples and things, some people obviously will do it, of course. We can do it with just a texture. You don't even have to deform the geometry. You can just have a water shader that will have multiple wavelengths. I know that. I've used it in my career, trust me. But there are some situations where you really need the deformation for any reason. Think of it, you know, you have this geometry deformed, you can emit from it, you can have foam flow over it, or you can have characters move through it. And if you're using just a texture to create a standing water, then you're not going to get that, right? You're not going to get the vertex of the geometry displaced. It's just an optical effect that you do in render time. So if you really need the geometry deformed, then you need to have this kind of soft up and down motion that doesn't happen right now at the moment. And that doesn't have anything to do with how much detail you have. You can have more detail, it will still look spiky. We can prove that to you in a minute if you want to. We can get rid of this. And the trick is if you have to change the number of the resolution of your master plane, then you have to recreate it, the soft body, because you have to remake the particles. But it's not really a big deal. So let's say that I want, instead of 30 on each direction, let's say I want 100 on each. Right, to give more detail to this. It's simple. I'm gonna put this right away in 0.3, which I had. Saves me one step. And it says, okay, let me just try again. All right, cool. It seems like I have something else selected aside from the geometry. Particles are here. I'm gonna keep this window open, leave it somewhere there. There we go. So now I have more detail. You will think, well, it will look smoother. But no, it looks worse, actually. It's more noticeable what's happening. So every particle is independent from one another. That's usually the case, of course, with minor particles. They're not really aware from their surroundings, and that's what makes them faster and cheaper. But for this kind of stuff, it's not really what you want. You don't really want, unless you're doing, okay, I see this, and I see what? I see a rocky surface, for example, or I see a bit of top of, I don't know, ice, could be. It's the only thing that you get, you know, this kind of sharp edges, or glass, broken glass, maybe, I don't know. So yeah, everything, in my opinion, everything in here, as you progress towards the final look of an effect, you will always get, you know, in the in-between stages, you always have other looks. And I believe that it's important to look at them and think about them and store them in your, you know, photographic memory and keep them there for later, because at some point someone might ask for something like that. But if we're going for the smooth water or snow or sand dune looking thing, there's another way to go. There's a solution for it. There's a way where you can kind of connect the particles together. I know that if you've seen the effects power user, you know what's coming. But for those of you who are watching just this lesson straight up and you haven't gotten to the effects power user yet, then there is a way to connect them, and that's using something called springs. Maya has, and the spring works just like a regular spring in real life. It has a stiffness, it has a dampening, and it will behave just like it. It will stretch and compress and lose energy based on the parameters that you specify. Just like in real life, you have a spring in real life, and some of them are harder than others. Just like it. That way, you get an option to connect a particle with the surrounding ones, and then when one moves, the other one will be affected by that motion. That's how we're going to solve that problem. The springs are located down here, as you can see. You need to have the particle selected, and before you make them, make sure that the resolution of your geometry is the one you want. And you're going to judge that based on the distance from the camera of the geometry, the resources of your computer, okay, how much time you have, how much money you have to spend on the shot. So keep that in mind before you make this. It could take a few seconds. In this particular example, there's not many particles, so it shouldn't take too long. And my advice, once they show up, you look at them without moving the camera. So I'm just anticipating that the resources of your computer are limited and you have, a regular, normal, everyday computer. If you do, then, what I would do if I was you, I will find an angle that is easy to see what Maya did. So something like that. I will create the springs. Okay, like I'm here. I'm going to talk about this in a second. But my point is, once they're created, the viewport can get a bit slow because you have to draw each one of the springs. And the method we're going to be using is going to create springs in diagonal as well as vertical and horizontal as well. So you're going to get a lot of springs in those. It was going to be like a net, almost like a fabric kind of thing. And that can be very taxing on your video card. So what I'll do is I'll just keep it like that so I can look what it did. And right away, as soon as it's done and I look at it, I just hide it. That's one of the few cases where if you hide something in dynamics, they will still calculate correctly. So the springs should never be visible. I repeat it. Never have the springs visible. If you do, then you're going to be posting on the group that you're seeing after the springs get very slow and you cannot work anymore, and then, the usual stuff. No, I'm telling you, hide it. Hide them because there's no computer that will handle that. And it's just an unnecessary waste of resources. Hide them, not delete them. Right? Hide them, don't delete them. That's all I'm saying. If you delete them, of course, there's nothing, you're not doing anything for the scene. So anyway, if you open the springs window, you will get this. This is explained in detail one more time in the Effects Power User program. There's different methods, and I show them all in those classes. The one I use in 99.9% of the time. Because there's one case where I can use a different kind of method. It's going to be the wireframe, and it's always going to be with a walk length of 2. The walk length, what wireframe will mean, it will just take a particle and we will connect it vertical and horizontal. With the neighbors. That's what wireframe will do. And the walk length of 2 means that it will also do it in a diagonal way. So one particle will be connected with the one on the top, the one on the bottom, the one on the right, the left, in diagonal in each direction. So you can see why it will get heavy on the video card because of a lot of springs. So if you don't need that much detail, don't go crazy and go put extra detail that you don't need and then make a spring, because unless you want to get a coffee or take a shower in the meantime, then you're going to have to sit there and wait. So walk length of 2, all this is explained in the other course. There's no need for that in this one. And hit create. It will take a little bit of time, and there it is. When we do the next example that I need to put more detail in it, when I create the springs, I'll probably pause the video because I don't have much to say in the meantime. When they're live classes, I use the time where the computer is calculating to ask you questions or to see what you guys are doing in the group. But for now, it's fine. So there we go. Like I said, I can see them placed. I can see the connections. You can see the particles connected diagonal with the other ones. So everything is working. I'm going to grab the spring without looking at it. There's no need to hit play, and I'm going to hide it, and it's created. So now look at the difference. Let's see what it does. You will say, well, but didn't you just say that it will work and it will solve the problem? Yeah. What happens is, and you can try doing something like that, you can see the net is there, the springs are working. The only thing is that they're too soft. That's it. They're too soft, so they don't have any resistance. Well, the particles are winning in this case. Let's just say that. The springs are not offering any sort of resistance. They will stretch and stretch until they need it. So it's almost like it doesn't exist. And you fix that by selecting the spring and playing with the stiffness value. As the name tells you, stiffness is just how hard this spring is going to be. So try, for example, something like 10. If you go too high on this number, the soft body will explode. And I'll show you that in a minute. It sounds cooler than it is. It doesn't really blow anything, but it breaks. So the stiffness to 10, it will have a different impact. You see the effect starts to get a little bit better. Okay, let me increase that to, let's say, 50. All right, a little bit better. You can see that there's a bit of connectivity, between one particle and the surrounding ones. I'm going to grab my turbulence field and probably put a bit of a expression in here. This class is not about this. This is just like the intro to soft bodies for this portion. In a way, it kind of shows you that it's done the exact same way as in Maya 2013 and anything before that one as well. So you've seen me do this before. It's nothing special. 3 expressions in here. One of these lessons, if you don't, well, you cannot remind me. When I'm recording, of course. But if on the group, you can probably remind me sometime, and I will add to one of my lessons. We will do a little button that will put these expressions for us, because this is annoying to do it every time, right? So there we go, plus 45, and this plus whatever, just to offset them in time. You know this, just to get this pattern moving. It starts to look like something. In my opinion, the springs are still too soft, and they're not losing energy as well. So you have to play with the stiffness and the damping. Damping is how quickly they lose energy. So they will stretch and compress over and over again until it stops. How fast it will come to a stop is this number. And that number doesn't go very high. It will go anything you like here, but if you go too high, it will break as well. Okay, it's a little bit better. Let me just increase the stiffness again to something like 150. Remember my advice, right? Don't go 1 to 10 to 11 and 12 and 15 and then 20, 21, 22. It's going to take you ages to do that. You see what I did? I went from 1 to 10, 10 to 50, 50 to 150. It's not a rule, but I'm saying that try to double until you find the sweet spot. If it breaks, it breaks. Nothing bad's going to happen to your computer. All right, it's better. It will take probably more, and that's just for an experiment. You can try 250, because I want to show you when it breaks what happens. That happens. You see? That's basically the spring not being able to contain all the energy or calculate it itself, and there you go. That's what I mean by exploding geometry. It just shatters. It breaks. Nothing to worry about. You rewind and then just find a lower number. That's all. And you will know the limit of your simulation as far as stiffness goes. There we go. It broke as well. It also has to do, just to give you an idea what happens, it's just the particles are moving, the spring is fighting to contain them, and it's stretching and compressing, a lot of calculations, and just, it can't handle anymore. The spring almost just like it tears, right? And that also has to do because the particles at the moment have the conserve set to 1, and that's not what it should be in any case. But it also it breaks again, right? So it means my stiffness in this particular example probably cannot go anything higher than 180, 150. And there we go. It's a little bit nicer, a little bit more coherent. When one particle moves up, the other one will follow. And then you get something more in the lines of water surface. What you could do after that is, if you decided that you cannot add more detail to the resolution of the geometry because you don't want to have that many particles for some reason, it's fine. You could afterwards, if you want it, then do a smooth operation on this. And sorry, mesh, okay. And where is it? Where did it go? Smooth. So this is you're adding detail after the simulation has been made. So you're not adding more particles to the soft body. You're not making the spring any more complicated. It's just something done on top of it after the fact. So it just softens a little bit of the geometry. If you don't want to see the particles because then you're getting close to the end of this, then you can create a layer and just hide them on a layer. If you hide them with Control H or display hide selection, don't do that because that's just not going to calculate correctly. You need to put them on a layer so they still have visibility and they will calculate the way it is. Now then you have something a lot smoother without compromising the resources of your machine. I'm not going to talk about the waves and the way they move because that's done in the other course, because I did the exact example in the other one. My point with this is Maya 2017. It's done the exact same way, looks exactly the same, and that's fine. So you know about springs, you know about soft bodies. Let's go and do the real example that I wanted, which you already seen it on my promotions. So let's go for it. What we want to do here, like I said, Daniel asked me the other day if you could drive gold PP based on a texture. He was doing some sort of effect where the particles were on the ground or they were going from a character to the ground, and he wanted to have an idea or control the way they were falling. So I gave him a solution. I'm not saying that this has 100% exactly what he asked me for at all. He just gave me an inspiration. He gave me an idea. My point with this is the more you participate in the group, the more you post and ask questions and propose ideas. I might not be able to take all your proposals for new classes and topics to talk about. It's nothing personal. It's nothing, I'm not being a prick or anything. I want to, believe me, I want more, ideas and inspiration. Not like I'm missing, I think I know what I'm going to do for the entire course, but these kind of things are interesting. I like it. I wasn't until 5:30 in the morning last night working on this because I like it. I think it was interesting, and when I find something like that, then I can, devote a lot of time to it. So based on that, then I want to be able to find a way to have a texture, any texture that I want. It will be better if it's black and white, because we're dealing in terms of numbers, and when it gets to colors, it might get a bit annoying. But I want to be able to map a texture to something, or to have a texture. And why not determine where the soft body is going to deform? In a way, determine where the gold PP is going to be based on that image. It's not something that you can do straight out of the box. I contemplated, for example, things like emitting the particles of a soft body, but that really didn't work. The method that I found, and probably you'll find something better, but this one works, and you will do the trick for you, is using a command that Maya has that is called color on point, I believe. Let me just, I will open the Maya help here so you can show you. So scripting reference, this is not a mail scripting class, don't worry. I know you had 2 or 3 of those in a row, and that's fine. But I believe it's called color on point. I'm just trying to, okay, color at point, because that's the only thing I wrote down last night, because it was really late and I didn't want to mess it up. So color at point, and how did I come up with this? I don't know. I mean, I was thinking, like I said, I tried with the emitting. My first idea was, I will emit the particles of a soft body, have the texture mapped to the emitter as usual, have the particles collect the color from the image that I'm pointing, and then use that color to drive gold PP. That path didn't work because I got stuck in the section where you cannot emit soft body particles. So that was dead right there. So I say, well, how can I sample? How can I have a particle sample, which is what happens when you emit them an inherent color from an emitter? Basically, when you have a regular surface emitter like we did before with the galaxies and all, you have a regular surface emitter. You map a texture to it to visualize it. You plug that texture on the emitter, and then you tell the particles, for example, to inherit the color. What happens is the particle is born on the surface. It will use this command, I believe. It has to be something done under the hood, but it will just basically the particle will be born on that point, and it will just sample the surface at that particular position and find the color and then assign it to RGBPP. That's I know that's how it works. So if Maya cannot do it for me automatically because I cannot emit the soft body particles, then I thought, well, I'm gonna do it by hand, and I found this. How did I find this? I just started typing things here, the word point, the word color, and then it came this. It will give you options, and this one came through. I read about it, just like you would do, anyone would do. Basically, it tells me that you can query textures on a particular surface based on a U and a V coordinate. And I can see the examples, and I can see that it's color at point dash output RGB. So it's basically looking for color, because you can also look for alpha transparencies and things like that. And it says, okay, it's going to output the RGB, and it's going to be done on the position in U 0.5, position in V 0.5. And well, this one specifies a range or 2 different points. I think you can do as many as you want. My point with this is that you need a U and a V position, and you need a texture, which is right here. So if I want a U and a V position, I can get that from particles. Particles will have that. I can have a texture, so why don't just give it a try? So here's the command. It's very simple. So what I'll do, I'll use this soft body right here. Now I have a bit of detail, but because it's just, I smooth this thing out, so probably I will just get rid of it. So I have a regular low resolution soft body. I will do the example with this resolution because it's faster. It's already made. And then I will open my scene file from last night, the one I did for the promotion, which I have more detail in here. And I don't want to do more detail, not because my computer can handle it. Yes, it can. It's normal. It's a normal computer, and it's a normal situation. Keep in mind, okay, when you're doing effects for film, for commercial, you will wait sometimes for simulations for hours, not minutes, hours. Some of them you run them overnight. Some of them you run them over the weekend. Okay, depending on how close you are from completion, how close the simulation from the camera, the format of the film, We'll do soon a class. It's just like a tech talk, right? I'm gonna talk about all those things. But for now, yeah, it's normal to wait for hours or days, or you run the simulation during the night and you go to sleep in hoping that in the morning when you wake up, then it will be done. So that's fine. I cannot do that in class because it will take instead of 200 hours, it will take 2,000 hours to do this course. It'll be a very boring one. But at home, I want you to see how far you can push it. And it's a good exercise because you will know how far your computer can go, and you know where you can where it ends for you, as far as this example goes, right? In case of you get a client and you get I don't know, let's say that you get an offer based on what we do there in this example. Someone sees your test and your post somewhere, and they ask you, hey, what I thought, right? I have a commercial where I want to promote, I don't know, let's say a perfume, right, or something, or a movie. And I just saw your post. They will write you, I saw what you did, and it gave me an idea. I wanted to have a fly through over some inside some mountain, for example, and then I wanted to move the camera up, zoom out, and then see anything. Let's say the face of the main actor, or the shape of my product, or some letters, anything, right? I saw your test and I wanted it. If you don't know the limits of your computer, you won't be able to tell this guy if you can do it or not, or how good it will look. So I'll do the example with low resolution. What I have here visible is relatively low, especially for the kind of deformations we're going to do, and if it's something for film, for example. You will need a lot more detail. But push your computer and see how far it goes. If it's something that, let's say that you have a lot of detail, it will look beautiful, and it's very, very good, and it takes 12 hours to simulate is fine. The way I calculated if I were to do freelance again is if I can do the simulation while I'm sleeping, then it's fine. If it starts to eat up hours of my day, it will have to be very well paid, or if I have a second computer, then it's fine. But I usually measure it in my terms of freelancing that way. If I can do it in my sleep, then it's fine. So if it takes 8 hours, 6 hours, give yourself up to 12 hours to run the simulation, then it's fine. In this case, it's not that bad because we're not, well, it depends on what you're going for, but you may just deform it once and then get a static geometry just with the shape. So even better. So it won't take too long. So you can really, really push it. Right, so I get my soft body working. We have that already. And there it is. I get my springs, I get everything. So how do I plug this texture in here? Okay, so I'm gonna take advantage of the particles. So let's say go to mode 4, open my outliner, show them because they're hidden here in the layer. And for the sake of this example, I'm gonna make them spheres. Yep, there we go. Beautiful. I'm going to make them spheres. I'm going to make them a tiny bit smaller so you can read them a little better. And there they are. Nothing special. They're green because, well, it could be because of the material, but don't worry about it. That's going to change in a second. That's not really the point. All right, so what I'm going to do, I'm going to go and create a texture. I'm going to go to my rendering editor, Hypershade. Like I said, this is not something I've done before, but I will use it a lot from now on. So if you find a better way because you have more time and I hope so. I hope that you tell me, hey, Luis, look what I discovered. I think if you change this and this, then you will get a better result. Share it, please. Don't email me privately. I beg you. Share it with the group. If you email me privately, I'm going to bounce you off and I'm going to tell you, hey, put it on the group, like I always do. So anyway, I'm gonna make a file texture. I'm not making a shader. There's not really a need for it. I'm just making a file texture, and I'm going to load one of the images that I did on the example. Let's say, no, this one not yet. This one not yet, not yet. Where is the car? There was a car here somewhere. There you go, car. So let's load this guy. What am I looking for in a picture? What I learned yesterday. What I expected it will be. Try to find pictures where the black and white definition is clear. I'm not talking about with high contrast or anything, but where white is really white, when you don't want things to move. What's going to happen here, right, is everything that is white, it will have a gold. Think of it as a gold PP map, but a cool one, right? A gold PP map being, if it's white, what it means. If it's white, what is it? White is 1. So if a gold PP of 1 means what? 5 seconds to think. If white is 1, and I'm going to drive that gold PP with that image, means that the particle will have a gold PP of 1, and it means that it won't move. It will stay static. And black is 0, means that the particle will have a 0 gold PP, means that it's free to move as it wishes. Find an image, or work it in Photoshop or whatever, and make sure that the parts that you don't want them to move are truly white, and then have a nice grayscale variation or shades of color, because those are going to become gold PP numbers. It's like if you were painting, pretty much. Right? So I'm going to use this one. It's not, I know it goes a little bit against what I said, but white, at least the background is white. It's a recognizable shape. And the car is gray, so it has a lot of difference in here, values. There'll be a million different images that are better than this one, but this is what I have right now. I could go on Google and find more if I wanted, but it's not really the case. All right, so I have this. It's not really assigned to anything. This is just to have it as a reference. I'm going to be calling this later on, okay? So I got my image, fine. There is no really a point of mapping that image to the plane itself like I do with other examples. That's not the way it's gonna work. The plane is actually pointless at the moment. I can just hide it. You will see the image reflected on the particles themselves. So how do we do that? Let's go in. Particle already has gold PP because remember that it's already gold to the plane. What it doesn't have is the color channel. So I'm going to make a per particle one. You know that each one has to pick its own color. You know that already from the other lessons. And I get my RGB PP created, and there's where we're going to put the expression. And it's quite simple. You just need to probably give it some thought and see what happens. Basically what I know, is that this command will need a U and V position and a texture. That's it. So I get my texture created. All I need to figure out is how to get U and V. I didn't experiment probably enough because of how late it was last night when I did this. I will continue to think about this and we'll figure some other way. What I did works perfectly fine. I thought first of using gold U and gold V, but it didn't really work for me because you will need to have the particles being emitted once again. I thought, my first thought was, well, I'm gonna use the same idea, right? I'm gonna use parent U and parent V to tell the particle where it's supposed to be born, to stay, and then use that as the coordinate to pick up the texture. But it didn't really work because to get parent U and parent V, you have to emit the particles, and these particles are not being emitted. So that's the difference. That's the main thing. So I'm not going to rely on U and V. I'm going to rely on the position of the particle. We need to figure it out later, okay? You need to sort it out. And my advice first is to start testing this on square situations. It could work on rectangles as well. It depends on the dimensions of the image you're going to be using. Look at my workflow and think about it. Try yourself. And I will ask, there is probably roughly about 42 of you on my class so far. I want to see different approaches, different images, different ideas as far as, what are you going to be using? Okay, I don't want to see the same car, the same, face of the lady. Try something different, please. There's a lot of you and there's a lot of cool stuff that we can see. Anyway, so what I'm going to do is then go to my my RGB on creation. And I'm going to grab that. And ultimately, what I want is whatever I do, whatever I finish doing, to be piped in here. This is going to be equal to something that I don't know yet. But I need to follow a few steps, okay, in order to get that. So what I did is base the command that I'm going to be using, which is color at point. You can copy it if you want to. And you can see that the syntax is color at point dash, in this case I want color, so RGB, so dash O, RGB, and then it continues with dash U for the U position and dash V for the V position. So we can say dash U, I don't know yet, dash V, I don't know yet, and the texture, okay, you find the name of it is right here, and it's called file 1. Okay, right here, put file 1 and end it. Well, eventually, we're gonna need, this is what we need to fulfill. This is gonna output 3 channels. If you look, if you read the description, you have to read, please, everyone, read everything. Most of you, well, I'm not gonna say, you're not gonna use most of you, I don't wanna generalize, but some of you didn't even read the website when you bought the course. You don't read my Facebook. You don't read what I write, and usually it's very, very short. I know that some of you don't like to read, but you have to. You have to, because Maya is telling you here what to do. So please, but I beg you from the bottom of my heart, read. Read everything in detail. It doesn't take more than 2 minutes. So if you read everything, Maya will tell you that the output of this thing is 3 different channels, so 3 different floats. One for red, one for green, one for blue. Read, right? Okay, So you get those three. Eventually, you're going to get these three values being output, and you have to keep in mind that RGB is a vector, so that's, you know where the thing is going already. All right, to begin with, because I was talking about I need to figure out a U and a V, I'm going to use position for it. So I'm going to make a vector, as usual, called $pos for position, and that's going to be equal to position. We did that 100 times before. Nothing special. You could say, well, you know, I'm not going to use the position in Y. Remember that we're talking of a two-dimensional image, B-dimensional image, I'm sorry. So really the Y value, the height of the particles, I don't care for it. I care for the position in X and the position in Z, I'm sorry. Those are the two numbers, and I'm gonna use them for U and V. So you will think probably what I thought last night, to say, well, okay, if I get position, then I can get this, and then say in U is going to be position X, and in V is going to be position Z. Well, let's see. I'm going to use nothing in here just to try, and you get a syntax error. I checked and checked and double checked, thinking, well, it's 5 in the morning, 4 in the morning. I'm tired. You know, am I making a mistake? No, that's not really the case. It doesn't like to take portions of a vector variable in here. It wants to take a float. So the easiest solution that I found was to make a float and color $u, and I make that $position in X, and I said float $v, and I make that $position in Z, and Bob's your uncle, like they say in New Zealand. Oh, come on. There we go. So I just I have a vector to gather the position, and I take two channels of the vector, each one on its own, and make them a float and rename them to something. So that way here, I can just say position in U is $u. Sorry, the U coordinate is $u, the V coordinate is $v. Yeah, of the texture called file1. Hit create. We'll still get an error, but I know that it's because I wrote something wrong, and here we go. There we go. I create, and the error is gone, meaning that Maya is understanding this. This is easy, as well as this. This is, I'm sorry, these two things. That's simple, easy to understand. This is the new guy on the blog, the new thing we're using. And because Maya's not complaining means that it understands it. Okay, so how do I use this? If I want to assign that, let's say to the color, I need to put this on a variable. And like I said, if you read everything, okay? I'm going to repeat that in every class until you read it. The output is R, G, and B on a separate channel. So that's three numbers. Not together, it's not a vector, right? They're three separate numbers. A number is a float. So I'm going to make a float. I'm going to call that whatever. You can say RGB if you want. But because it's more than one, okay, you need to make it an array, which is called like this. Remember what the explanation of the previous class, the Tupperware that gets bigger and bigger the more you put stuff? Okay, that's the one. The same thing. This is going to be a Tupperware with three spaces, but individually. Think of it as a big Tupperware that can fit three little ones. I think that's the easiest analogy I can find. So it's a float, an array of floats, an array of three floats in this case. It could be 6 or 10 or 11. And actually, if you were to do something like this other examples where they specify two different positions in U and in V, like here, for example, this is one point and this is another. It's sampling two different points on a surface, on an image. So you will find this is okay because you will get 6 different numbers. Being RGB again. So it's RGB is not red, red, green, green, blue, blue. It's red, green, blue, red, green, blue. And it's mentioned on the page. You can see the return array will have 6 values in this example, please, in the following order: RGB, RGB. I didn't use this command until yesterday. I'm just pretty much in the same boat as you are, just I'm a bit more confident in what I'm doing in Maya. That's it. But I read. That's the important bit. So because I read that, I know how it outputs this. So this is okay. You need to put the equal sign, and remember always, if you're going to specify an array, you first have to say, okay, if I execute this code all at once. So execute this, and then assign the result of this execution. Remember that's what those little single quote means. Assign the result to this array of floats. That's it. It will take a second because now it's more complicated. You see that it hit edit, and it took a second to say yes. Of course, now it's a per particle expression. I don't have hundreds and thousands of particles, but each particle has to find now its position based on this image here. So it has to calculate a few things. Not the end of the world. Technically, I have now 3 numbers here that will describe the RGB. And you see what I'm trying to move. It's not like it's stuck. There we go. So when you put the single quotes, Maya starts to evaluate right away. So what I was saying is basically I have 3 numbers now that describe the color on their particular position for each particle. Because there are 3 different numbers, as you can see of the Maya mail scripting guide, it doesn't work if I want to do RGBPP right away, so I have to turn these 3 floats into a vector, and that's easy. You can say vector, dollar, you can say, to remember what it is, color at point, for example. That's going to be equal, because it's a vector, goes, you know that already, inside here. And what is it going to be? Well, it's going to be dollar RGB what? Dollar RGB, the first one, okay. Sorry, 1 second here, there we go. Okay, I hate this keyboard that I have. RGB, which is this one. Remember, there's 3 floats. Maya is telling you already the order where it's executing that and is giving you the results. Gives you first the red, then the green, then the blue. So it's easy. If I want to build a vector, I can just say RGB 0, which is the first one, which is red. And you can copy this. And then it will be RGB 1 for green. And then the last one, RGB 2 for blue. That is the vector. We're not using anything new aside from the color at point command. That's it. But everything else you see here, you've seen it before in my classes. So if you find it hard, it's normal. Okay, we're starting. So go back a couple of lessons, watch again what I said, get acquainted with. The only thing that you have to, practice and learn, if you want to put it on the fridge or put a little sticky note on the mirror of the bathroom, so when you brush your teeth, you remember the vectors are 3 numbers. They go in between the less than and greater than signs. Floats are for numbers, strings are for text, and then your life will be fine. So if you take 3 different numbers or 3 floats, you can build a vector with that. If you have a vector, you can extract 3 different floats out of each channel, so you're fine. Nothing to worry about. It's very simple, actually. That's what I said in my promotion. This is a 5-minute setup, and it can do wonders. It will, if you just do it directly without teaching it, it takes no longer than 5 minutes. Actually, I was being generous with 5 minutes. It takes less. So it's very simple. So now that I have a vector built out of the 3 floats that this gives me, I can just copy this guy and say that RGBPP is going to be equal to that guy, which is a vector. This is a vector. Sorry, RGBPP is a vector. Color at P is also a vector. Now it's apples and apples. Yeah, we're not mixing weird stuff. Hit edit, no errors. Let me just show you. Nothing wrong in here. This is a creation expression. The particles are already being there. They're not really emitted Yes, you're right. Let's just rewind it. And you get white. Okay, don't panic. Let's see what happens. Let's see why it's doing that. I already believe that it's working. The only thing is that we're probably sampling a different size. So what happens is this. That was my logic yesterday. I'm going to show you what I thought, and it worked. This plane, if you remember, well, actually, you don't have to remember. You can see it. You can grab the plane in here. And we scaled it, right? 100 units. So the plane is 100 units, but the texture itself is only one, is covering one portion. So you will get, basically what happens is you will get 100 times the texture assigned in here. So let's try putting this to 100 and to 100 and hit rewind, and look, the car starts to show up. The only thing is that it's not in the right position, and it probably is not big enough. It's fine. It is working, you see? It's picking up the color already. I can zoom out, and you can see them. And that's the only part of the problem. If we spend a little bit more time, we're going to figure out a more elegant way to do it. I didn't want to trouble myself at 4 in the morning yesterday, so what I did is translate this thing. So let's say I move this 50 units in one direction. And now because you have a visible feedback, then it's a lot easier. Okay, so I moved that 50 units, and what if I move it 50 units in the other direction as well? Guess what? I get the car right in the center. It may not be the right proportion. Then you can just go ahead and figure this out. So probably, it will be, I don't know, let's say 110 times in one direction. Makes it a bit bigger. So this doesn't take more than 2 minutes. And there we go. Oh, you want a little bit further down, then well, fine. Move it a little bit further down. Oh, that's not the right direction. And you get a hang of it pretty quickly. Let's say that you wanted 60 units down here. There we go. It's not really 60, it's 40. There we go. Right where you want it, and it works. Okay, so it works now for color. So that's a way of having the particles of a soft body inherit color. Not really the purpose of the course. Of the lesson. But we get in there. That's more than half of what we needed to do. Now I'm going to use the color of this image and drive gold PP with it. And that's the easy part. You go in here to get the gold PP expression, go to creation, and you have to specify somehow relate RGB PP, which is a color, with gold PP. RGB is a vector. You see what I mean with the put a sticky note on the mirror of your bathroom or on the fridge to repeat yourself those things? Once you get a hang of that, then you'll be fine. So RGB PP is a vector and gold PP is a float. We need to find a way to turn a vector into a float. And we did it actually on the previous lesson, or the one before that. We used the magnitude command. If you remember the class, I told you that the magnitude command will give you the length of a vector. Basically, the result is a float, is a number. And you don't have to be very specific here. You don't have to be very precise. I'm sure that some Houdini lovers will come in and say, oh, but that's not really precise. The numbers are not really in the the right range. I don't give a nothing. I don't care. I'm not going to curse in my course. I don't care. I only care if it works. Like I always say from day one, I care if the result is an interesting picture that I can do in 5 minutes much faster than what they can do. Not a competition, but I know I hear this on a daily basis. So I don't care. Don't come with me to technicalities and numbers and decimal points. I don't care. If it looks good, it looks good. If it doesn't, it doesn't. That's simple as that. And this will look good. My point is, I need to turn then this vector into a float. And it's easy. You can go to gold PP is equal to the magnitude, in this case, of RGBPP, that's it. That's it. Hit edit, no mistakes. So gold PP is equal to the magnitude of the RGB PP. Let's see if it's true. If that's true, means that all these particles are white. Like I said before, white is 1. 1 means don't move. Anything black or gray, okay, will be free to move. All we need to do now is force it to move with a force. You know what we haven't done? We haven't saved. So let's save this scene. This was my test from last night. I don't want to override it because I want to show you a few more examples. Once this is done. So I'm just gonna call this recording. Let's say. There we go. Big mistake from my part, right? I didn't save, and I'm experimenting. Chances are that when you're experimenting, mine will crash until you find the bounds of what you're doing. So big no-no for me. But hey, I wish I could say I was doing it on purpose, but no, I really truly forgot. Okay, so I was saying that let's force these particles to move. If you hit play, the cool thing is that this expression is, even though it's doing a big calculation at first, it will only be slow on the first frame when you rewind, because that's the moment when it will sample again. So the particles are moving, and you will say, but why didn't you just say that the particles were not supposed to move and blah, blah, blah with the gold PP and all? Yeah, of course. But you forgot that I had the gold weight 2.3. You have to put it to 1. Remember that gold PP and gold weight multiply each other. So if gold PP is 1 and gold weight is 0, then you get nothing. You will get, meaning no gold. You will get free particles to move. And vice versa, right? If gold weight is 1 and gold PP is 0, then you get particles moving. And the only case it will work, of course, if this is 1 here and 1 there. So you have to put 1 to be able to get 100% of the expression. So now there is 1. I'm even going to rewind. I'm going to hit play, and there we go. You can see every particle in white got stuck, and every particle in gray is now moving. Now you're free to do whatever it is you want with this. It's up to you. I thought it would be interesting to do mountains that will just, and that's the purpose of this course. So instead of me doing boring mountains like everyone will do, how about you get a mountain in the shape of a Lamborghini, right? Why not? How do you get a mountain in the shape of the Lamborghini? Once you do this, what I did was, and you will find a more interesting way with more time, I just simply push them up with the uniform field. Uniform field, magnitude to 0, direction in X 0, direction in Y 1, just to push them up. And I went slowly just to get the height that I wanted. Now you get a competition between the turbulence field and the uniform field. If you just want to get the height first, or you know what to do, right? Lower this to 5. And let's increase the uniform field a bit. I think that's a lot, right? Just to prove the point. What happened? You see the particles started to move up and then they move down. Remember that you have springs. And I think it's going to be very interesting, because you can see them grow and shrink and then, find their final, position. So you can see them grow, shrink a little bit. They're jittering too much. Be careful with that. Okay, that's the spring doing, a lot of work in here. But there we go. You get some interesting particle deformation with colors if you want to use them. But that's not what we came here for, right? We came here for soft bodies. So there they are. Soft bodies. So if you don't want to see the particles, you get a mountain shape, okay? That's my whole point with this course. You get a mountain shape. That's why I presented it this way. I show you first what it did, and you say, oh, well, that's boring. I've seen this class 100 times. Anyone can do that? No. No one else has done this in class. Okay, here's a bit harder to read. I'm just thinking, in my mind, I think a Lamborghini commercial where the guy's driving. That's what I would do, right? If I was a director in it, I would just have a guy driving through these hills. Beautiful car, looking great, everything is wonderful. And then somehow the camera, with the whatever slogan in the back, and the camera moves away, rotates like it's a drone or a helicopter camera, and then you see, oh shit, he's driving on a hill shaped like the car. Cool. No one has done that. And I wish I could patent this idea, because I know that someone will copy this and use it. So that's fine. Okay, so that's how you do mountain range shape like a car. You can get a better image, of course, and you can start perfecting this by adding, first of all, more detail to the plane to get more particles and get, nicer deformations. A better image, probably more suited for this. If I were to do that commercial, I will have a art director who will give me something that I need. But for being something that I found on the internet, that picture, and something that we're just improvising in class, I think is pretty freaking cool. You want something cooler? Let's save this, and open my scene from yesterday, because it just has more detail. That's it, and it has all other images assigned to it. So this is what I was showing yesterday on my sample. Okay, so I got this mountain range. Same idea, but you can see now that I have a lot more detail in here. These particles are not being taken advantage of, so I will probably just chop this plane off and have something that has that dimension. It will work. But for now, just for the hell of it, here it is. It's the exact same technique. As you can see, here's my particle. My particle expressions are here. It's exactly the same. Just different, probably variable names, but it's the same procedure. A cool thing, though, that I haven't done it in class, and that's your assignment. Your assignment, as usual, is to mimic what I did, but I want extra points to whoever goes and does an animated texture. I can see your brain just hit the brakes right there. What happened? Animated texture, man. You grab a video, grab any short video, or even a GIF image, anything you like. If it's a short video, you can even record yourself, and you'll freak out when you see it. If you have a girlfriend, do a video of your girlfriend. She'll love it. Have her a little short video of her face or something. Export that video as a sequence of images. Load the sequence on your file node, which you can do easily. Okay, you get your file node in here. Here you can load a sequence. If you don't know, then look for my FX Power User. The intro to Maya probably has that, but it's very simple. You can load a sequence of images here. Once you do the sequence of images, all you have to change is grab these expressions and place them in creation and in runtime. It will be a little bit slow, but then you will get the mountains, for example, changing the shape as the person talks and moves. I'm saying just a person, but it could be anything. It could be a video of someone walking. So if you want to have a mountain range that walks, then you can do that. I'll probably, if I have time, I'll try to play with it and post it, but I would love to see that coming from you guys. Whoever does the best version will get that video shared on the social media and become famous for a day. How about that? But there we go. So this is just with more detail, different image, same technique. So if you just extract that, there we go. Just select how deep you want it to be. And you know that if you just show polygons and don't show the particles, then you get a mountain range in seconds that has the same topology or same look as the other image. On my example, I also showed a couple of pictures of some famous ladies in here. Just look at another one. That's a mountain, that's another one. That's the car that you saw. Let's say this lady here. You will have to probably adjust, in some situations, adjust the stiffness of your springs if you want to get more detail or less detail. So if you want something smooth like this, then you use certain stiffness. But there we go. Here you get terrain, for example, that like I did on the video. It could be even water, actually. If you put a water shader on this, shader like water, then people will be like, what this is weird, and then you just zoom out and show them what it is. They'll freak out. That's how you get a job. And that's how you get a job with only 12 classes of the course. Then you start continuing the course as you work and you get paid. Like, trust me, do something cool, do something interesting with this example. No one has done it, man. So do it, and I guarantee you start sending your reels, and people want to talk to you, at least talk to you, which is a good thing to begin with. So So with that in mind, well, I want to see some cool test. Remember, extra points to whoever gets an animated texture doing this kind of stuff. So with that, well, thank you very much, and well, I'll see you in the next class. Bye-bye.